This session is being recorded and also being live streamed on YouTube. It's great to have so many people with us. We've got some fantastically interesting case studies to start the session off, 3 in fact. And then the intention is to open up the session almost as a standard Zoom session. But if you do, try and raise your hand if you wish to speak. But the final sort of 20 minutes, half an hour, it depends on how long presentations go on for, is intended as an open discussion of issues as you guys understand them in terms of the digital inclusion of vulnerable groups, what the key challenges are, and any experience that you guys have, as well as questions and for our key panelists. So I'm going to hand over in a minute to Victoria from Solinum, and who's going to do a presentation for us about the work that Solinum is doing in France, and particularly the SoliGuide, working with homeless people. Will be followed then by Apps for Good replication in Portugal with João Baracho, and finishing off with a presentation from Mind of My Own, who are co-producing apps with challenged young people in the UK and elsewhere. So without any more ado, I'm going to hand over to Victoria Mandeville and Solinum, if Victoria is ready to share her screen. So
yes, I am.
Great, thanks.
But it does not work. It tells me that it's deactivated.
Oh, it's probably me. So here's my first slide, everybody. And I'm going to stop sharing so that Victoria can.
I can't. I think I need more access, something. But if you have it, because I send it to you by mail, maybe you can.
No, it's fine. You can, Victoria, you can now.
Oh, amazing. Thank you so much. All right. So I am the happy founder and director of Solinum. And we define ourselves as a non-profit startup. So that's kind of something already. And our goal is to create and deploy innovative tools for both social workers, volunteers, and their beneficiaries, so homeless people and refugees. We do this using new technologies, and we have several different projects. The most well-known of them is SoliGuide, and I will speak about it a bit more in the end of the conference. But mainly because of how we use new technologies and digital tools to help homeless people, we very often have the question, okay, but homeless people don't have a smartphone and they don't know how to access the internet and they don't know how to use it. And it used to bug me a lot. So for a bit of background, I've been volunteering with homeless people for years now. And I have seen on the streets that a lot of them are more connected than I am. Of course, it depends on people. But when I would hear about homeless people I know that had to hide the smartphone because if they were begging on the street and have a smartphone in their hands, people would literally spit on them. Like, it's something that happened. And I found it awful. So we decided with Solinum to do a national study in 2018. So we conducted the study across France in 16 different cities. And we used a methodology that was mixing qualitative and quantitative results. So that means that we had the first phase of very long interviews with homeless people, with social workers, with volunteers to really dig out everything that was interesting. And then we interviewed 300 homeless people across France to obtain some statistics. And on this, on the people that we interviewed, we had staggering results. So we found out that 71% of homeless people in France, of course, had a smartphone. which is not surprising for me, not surprising for volunteers, not surprising for social workers, but it was very surprising for people that didn't really know anything about homelessness. But it does not mean that digital inclusion is magically resolved just because a lot of people have smartphones. So what we found out was that only 29% of people that we interviewed had a monthly phone plan. So that means the vast majority of people had either nothing. So they had a smartphone that they would connect to public Wi-Fi and McDonald's and so on. Or they had SIM cards that they had to buy regularly. And even though they had access to digital tools, and even though they would go often on like Facebook and YouTube and so on, 58% of them told us that they were not able to do their administrative procedures alone. And we also found out that there was a lot of disparities between different socio-demographic groups. So, for example, obviously age plays a key role. 85% of people that were under 30 years old had a smartphone, which makes sense. And only 55% of people that were more than 50 years old had a smartphone. So already you have a huge gap between young people and older people. We also found out that people that were asylum seekers were more likely to have a smartphone, so 83% of them. There was also differences in the education level. So 78% of people that had a diploma told us that they were comfortable with digital tools. And it fell down to 32% with people that did not have a diploma. So that was definitely a big difference. We also interviewed a lot of families that were sometime in a migration path, and 86% of them had a smartphone because it was oftentimes important for children. We also noticed some differences between gender, which are not easy to attribute. So 39% of women that we interviewed told us that they were very comfortable with digital tools. And with men, it was 60%. So that's a huge difference. Men are, according to our study, more comfortable with digital tools. However, there is a huge bias, which is that people had to tell us themselves. So it is possible that women are just as comfortable with digital tools, but they refer to themselves as less comfortable. So we don't know if women are really less good with digital tools or not. And finally, there is a lot of differences with the duration of the homelessness. So 53% of people that we interviewed that had been homeless for more than 5 years had a smartphone. So that's a lot less than the general population. With this study, we were able to see a lot of challenges for digital inclusion that I've listed here. So the first challenge that homeless people and social workers told us was that administrative procedures online were very difficult. So it's really important to make a government website user-friendly because right now I see people on the street using Facebook, Viber, WhatsApp, easy peasy. But with websites that are made by the government and that gives them access to social grants, for example, it's a lot harder. So we have to make websites that are accessible. We also found out that a lot of people wanted to use digital tools, but couldn't because to have a monthly phone plan, for example, you had to have an address, you had to have papers, you had to have a bank account, and it's not accessible to everyone. So they had to resort to SIM cards that were very expensive, that did not have a lot of data. So that's a huge problem, and we should make it easier for everyone. Another issue is that not everyone speaks the language of the country they are in or are comfortable. As you can see, I have a terrible English accent. And it's the same for people that are, I don't know, asylum seeker in France and they can't read everything in French. And the issue is that government websites are oftentimes only in French. So we should translate everything. Also, in homeless shelters, right now I am in a homeless shelter, so you can see behind me. And we don't have Wi-Fi in the homeless shelters. It seems dumb, but it's one of the first things people would ask for because it should be a basic right now. It's not a luxury anymore. We also found out that people were very comfortable with smartphone, but computer were another subject altogether. Because if you want to work, you have to be able to use a computer like 90% of the time. But most of people are comfortable with the smartphone, but not with a computer. Then we have charging phones and also digital tools, especially for homeless people. They are very stressed. It really gives them a kind of psychological stress all day long to be like, okay, I have 30% battery. I must find charging port, and there's not a lot of them available. And last but not least, we preach for including users in the in the construction of digital tools, and that's what we did.
Must notify to everybody.
So what we did with SoliGuide is that we decided to consult the people that were going to use them. And that's how we built a digital guide that references all useful places for homeless people and refugees. And so what we do is that we have a methodology that simply puts ask the people that are going to use the tools about how they would like them to be. And that's how we had a huge impact in 2020. Because the digital tool that we built was used hundreds of thousands of times, and we were able to give information to people in a time of need. So SoliGuide is an online guide that is accessible through various supports. You have a website. You can go on soliguide.fr, and on soliguide.fr you will find food distribution, you will find free showers, you will find administrative help, French classes, and so on. You have an online chat so that you can speak directly to people that can give you more information. We have a mobile app, we have printed lists, and we also share our database with other tools so that the information can be accessible for everyone. So it's just an example to show you how when you construct, when you build an app, a platform with the people that are going to use them, you can tackle digital inclusion by just making it easier for them. That's all for me.
Fantastic, Victoria. That was fantastic. And I'd just like to draw everyone's attention to the fact that Victoria has already taken part in a webinar for Medici. So there is a whole load more information out there about the great work that SoliGuide, that Solinum and the SoliGuide have done in France. So I'm going to move on quite swiftly because I'm keen for us to have a question and answer and Zoom chat. So thank you so much, Victoria. That was wonderful. There are a number of questions popping up in the chat, which we will address after these presentations. So we're going to move on to João Baracho in Portugal, who is going to present to us on the Apps for Good iteration in Portugal. Thanks, João.
I think you.
I need to.
Hello.
Hello.
I think you're seeing already my screen. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, thank you. Well, about CDI Portugal, we are an NGO, a Portuguese NGO working on social inclusion and innovation. And we belong to a network born in Brazil 26 years ago, named now Recode, former CDI, and we are in several countries. We begin in Portugal in 2013. Okay, and our methodology is a basic methodology. We join a group of people, try to know which problems are common, and we try to develop a technological solution to minimize or to reduce the problem. Our main project in Portugal is Apps for Good. Apps for Good is a program born in UK. Fortunately, Heather Peacock, that's the CEO of Apps for Good UK, is with us. Thank you, Heather, for being present. And Apps for Good is teach students about new technologies. We use mainly 4 pillars. One, introducing technology on the education without being a target, but as an important mean. A student-driven model where the teacher is not the leader, but is the facilitator, and a strong effort on the training teachers, transforming the pedagogical teaching process. And one of our strong pillars is to get the education with a real contact with the real economy. We have a platform with different courses, with different durations, with different contents according to what the students will like to do and we want to do, as well as the teachers. And we have this schedule. And this schedule is important because Greg asked me to show the differences of the programs between UK and Portugal. And one important thing of the program is not a clone. We don't copy the program in terms of the delivery method. We have the same contents, we have the same methodology, but we try to adapt the program to each country. And it's our schedule in Portugal. Our schedule in Portugal is much more face-to-face. We are more Latins, okay? I think you understand. And this what we do. We have a platform with all the contents. We have an invitation to the schools by the Ministry of Education in July. Then we have an online welcome session, even when we are not in the pandemic times. We have a welcome session. Then we have in-person teacher training. That's not the case this year. That's a presential online training. And we have more 5 sessions online, even without the pandemic, during all the year, where we teach all the 5 models to develop a product. And the target is to develop an app for smartphones and tablets, always with the SDGs as a target, okay? Then we make visits to the schools when we are not in the pandemic times face-to-face, of course. Now we are doing it virtually, and we have 2 visits, one at the beginning of the year, one at the end of the year, and the main target is to know how it's running, what the students and the teachers feel with the program, and the most important thing, the impact evaluation, that it's quite important to us, and we do it with the University of Lisbon. Then we have the competition. That's one point where we have differences to UK, because we have the regionals, 2 phases, the regionals, and we have 4 regionals, North, South, Madeira, and the Azores Islands. Okay, and then these regionals work like semi-finals to a final event on September, normally at the Carlos Gulbenkian Foundation. This is some photos of the teacher training and school road shows. You can see the teams and how we act. And this is the regional events and the final events, some photos making differentiation between the online and the face-to-face. You can see on your left the face-to-face events, and on your right the online that we have to use this year, of course, and the last final year. Then normally when we are not in the pandemic times, we have the visit to UK final event, which is quite good for our teams, because it's the contact with the other teams, with other realities, with other teachers, and it's quite important. Normally we take our best team to the final event in UK, and we take with us the teachers too, and that's very good, and that's one good encounter for the students. One of the important factors of the program, so important as the digital inclusion, the digital the gap reduction, is the diversity, and we have about 50% of girls on our program, which, for those who know the numbers that we have in European Union and worldwide about girls in tech, knows that is a very important number. We have including some prizes for the Tech Girl of the Year, and this Tech Girl is participate in some events in Portugal because of this prize, and events normally because of diversity and because of women. Then we use the program, and we invite the students to go to other events after they complete the Apps for Good, because the question is, okay, we have so many apps, so many ideas, so many students working on this, why they don't go, or they don't continue with their ideas? And the App Startup is one or more events that we invite the teams from all the years of Apps for Good to participate, and it's more in a professional environment. And the last 2 years they were present in the Portugal Digital Summit, which is the most important digital encounter in Portugal, and for them is fantastic because they touch the professionals, the digital professionals from the multinational companies. Okay, this is our impact. We are growing globally and nationally, with a lot of impact on the students and even on the teachers. And the impact on teachers is quite important, and with some recognitions for the program. And this includes from the contents that we took from UK to our methodology here. We have the prize for UNESCO for the improving teacher efficiency, and we had, for instance, the recognition from EU about an inspiration practice for tech education. And we are working with the government on the ENCODE 2030. That's an important technological program in Portugal. Okay, this is our partners, and that's it. I think I'm on my time. Thank you, Greg, and I'm available to your questions.
Thank you so much, Joao and Victoria, and you're being brilliant time-wise as well, guys. Now, I'm aware of the fact that we've got a really interesting and knowledgeable panel audience, so you will get an opportunity to speak shortly, guys, but I'm going to open the floor to another fantastically interesting case, if you like, which is Mind of My Own in the UK, and we have Yvonne Anderson and Jill Thorburn with us today from Momo. So if you can lead off, guys, with your presentation, both Jills.
I am waiting for permission to share my screen.
You may have to unshare, stop sharing, Joao.
No, it says you're the co-host now, Yvonne. It's fine.
Great, thank you. Hi, that should be it. We're Mind of My Own. We believe in a world where children all get their voices heard. I'm Yvonne, and I'm one of the co-founders. Over to you, Jill.
Thank you, Yvonne. Yeah, hello, I'm Jill Thorburn. I'm the other co-founder. So already we're unusual, 2 women running a Tech for Good company.
Indeed. So we believe in a world where children can be heard. This is a little snapshot of our One app. We believe children are better supported and cared for when they're listened to, and they should be able to participate fully in their lives, and it should be easy for them to speak up anytime they want. And both of our apps, and this is our first one app, enable children to do that. Both apps are fully accessible, and importantly, they create a unique digital solution to supporting advancing children's rights. As such, we believe we're the only digital tool that comprehensively supports Article 12 of the United Nations Convention on the Rights of the Child. Our ambition is for all children's voices to be heard, and we carefully co-produce all our apps, as you'll hear later, with young people. And these are two of the reasons why Mind of My Own is the trusted app for children's services across the UK, and in 2021 in a number of other countries as well. I'll hand over to Jill.
Thanks very much, Yvonne. So like Victoria was talking about earlier, we co-produce our apps with children and young people. Now, this is our pre-COVID times where we were able to do that face-to-face. And often we'd end up in post-it heaven, but we would engage the children and young people in UX design workshops that really got them to think in a different way. And we were able to work with groups of children and young people that other people avoid doing this type of work with. And recently, we were given a presentation, I think it was last week, to the Social Care Institute for Excellence to help support their co-production work as well, which is really was good fun. So we've co-produced our two apps with several thousand children and young people now, and they have predominantly been in the UK, but also across in New Zealand. We've worked with a couple of hundred over in New Zealand, and we are hopefully just going to be doing that also in a couple of other countries, as Yvonne mentioned. We've worked with many of the children and young people. Other people either forget to work with or try and avoid because it's difficult. And we've worked with many care experienced young people, and also with children within custodial settings. And we've recently co-produced with adults in a few of the councils that we work with, which I can tell you is much more challenging than working with children and young people who are just much more digitally native. So yeah, this is an image of one of our apps. This is our second app, Express. And we co-produced this with 5 different groups of children and young people who were described to us as having moderate to severe learning disabilities. So we ran workshops right throughout the UK with these different groups of children and young people. And what I can tell you about our co-production workers, I don't think I've ever been in a session where I haven't been completely mind blown by some of the things that children have said. And we always learn how to make our apps as accessible as possible because they see the problems that we don't see. Okay, so this is our Express app, the inside of our Express app, and I'd like to tell you a little bit about it because we think it's one of the most accessible apps, particularly that we're aware of, that helps children and young people to be able to have a voice when they maybe have challenges with things like literacy. So Express is highly original. It's a digital tool, and we think it's unique in meeting needs of those children that are very hard to reach. So those children, maybe they're 2, maybe they're 3 years old, or maybe they've got additional needs that need a bit of support. Express helps children as young as 2. We've seen it used right throughout this, through the UK, and also those with additional needs. And it helps them to express their views, their wishes, and tell people things that are important to them that sometimes we overlook, or sometimes it's just too difficult to get that information. It's co-designed, it's innovative, it's fun. The children and young people think that they are playing a game, but actually they're giving people like teachers or social workers absolutely key information about things that can be really difficult to talk about, like where they feel safe or where they don't feel safe. It's designed mostly to be used with a worker alongside those young people. It uses minimal text. As you can see, it's got expressive pictures. It also has affirming sounds, which we haven't got time to show you today. And it helps children and young people communicate their views and preferences in an enjoyable way. We set out to make things that are functional, but that are also delightful to use. The design and function that I'm talking about enables children's participation in education, health and social care and social work assessments, planning, reviewing, and as well, you can create a one-page profile about that child that tells you all about them in minutes. So I'm going to hand back to Yvonne now, who's going to talk a little bit about some of the
Thank you.
accessibility.
So this is another image of the One app, the first app we ever produced. Now you can see that it's in Arabic, so I'll explain a little about that in a minute. But first of all, generally about accessibility. We started building these apps in 2013, and originally it was a small project and a good idea. And we have to admit, at the time, we did not know a huge amount about accessibility. But we learn as we go along, we iterate, and because we co-produce and get close to our users, we know what they need, what they want. And recently, or over the last couple of years, we've updated and reviewed and refreshed both of our apps and everything that sits around them. And with accessibility very much at the front of our minds. So both apps have been redesigned for enhanced accessibility, and now we use accessibility by design, which is routine. We always used privacy by design as well. So this image shows you our One app translated instantly into Arabic, and that's because in addition to the inbuilt accessibility that we've added, we also have a plugin by a company we partner up with called ReciteMe, which one of the features that it offers is instantaneous translation into 115 languages. So this immediately has made our apps accessible to a huge, huge variety of children and young people, particularly asylum seekers and unaccompanied refugees and so on. In addition to this language translation, the ReciteMe plugin also enhances the accessibility more by allowing the user to determine the font. They can have a dyslexia-friendly font, for example, or just one that they like. They can change all the color, they can change the size of the text, and they can use reader bars for people who need to exclude unnecessarily stimuli from their reading. There's the entire range of accessibility features is on this plugin called ReciteMe. It also has text to speech. So if people do not have good literacy, they can have all of the options read out to them. So we've worked really, really hard in recent times to up our game in accessibility.
Yvonne, I heard a lovely story. I was talking this morning to a senior social worker who is working with a child who is at risk. So they have a child protection plan. And she was able for the very first time to understand that child's views and wishes and was able to communicate so much more effectively in Vietnamese this morning. So that's just one of the little stories. But yeah, it's really, really fantastic to be able to help people have a voice that maybe haven't had one before.
Absolutely. So thank you.
Yeah.
I'll stop sharing.
Yeah, and please give us a little follow on Twitter there if you want to know a little bit more. It's at Mind of My Own app, or come and say hello, just hello@mindofmyown.org.uk as well after the session. We'd be happy to give you a lot more information, but we were trying to stick to time, Greg.
You've done absolutely, I mean, all three of you, these are such interesting projects, and I felt really bad about asking people to hold it to 10 minutes. I do want to open, I've got loads of questions of my own, which I'm not going to ask immediately, but I would like to open the floor initially for people to ask questions of our three cases, our three presenters. We've got Solinum working, working with homelessness in France and digital access there. Joao doing the work with Apps for Good, and I know we have Heather Pickov in our sort of panel audience, whatever you want to call it, and also of course Jill and Yvonne from Momo. I mean, brilliant projects, brilliant presentations. It's really unfair to ask you to only do 10 minutes, but that's it. And then I'm going to come back to Jill and the panelists to open up a general discussion and question and answer session in terms of the challenges, solutions, complex needs, and inclusion, digital inclusion specifically, but inclusion and equality issues as they affect vulnerable groups and those that are excluded. Now, everyone's touched on that. So, if you have questions for our panelists, please do either open up your mics now and ask, or I'll keep an eye on chat and answer any questions. So there must be some direct questions, I'm sure, to Victoria, Joao, Yvonne, Jill.
There's one, while people are getting ready to do that, there's one in the chat which is about what about semi-illiterate people, often elderly women, and I was just saying that Recite Me is a really good tool to use in that case around the text-to-speech, so that they are able to have the information read to them. It works incredibly well.
Yeah.
Thanks for that, Jill. That was that's great. A great answer to that question. It does sound really, really interesting. In fact, Recite Me, I've already noted it myself. We could have done.
Yeah, we met them through the Tech for Good Awards in the UK. They're a really good company and nice people to partner with.
Greg.
So we've got a question from a group that I'm working with here. How are you all adapting to the lockdown and continuing your work? So that's Emmanuel, I expect.
I'm happy to answer that, Greg.
Yeah, Victoria and Joao, just open your mics, guys, and chip in if you wish. But Jill, yeah, shoot, go.
Yeah, so we actually found it pretty easy. We always worked remotely. So I'm up a mountain in Wales. Yvonne's down the south of England. So actually, we did not find it a difficult transition to make. We have been helping some of our community. So our apps are used within about a third of the councils in the UK, and they had much more adapting to do than we did. So we've been helping them to do that. And I have to say, taking our co-production sessions online, I was super nervous. I think it's the thing I've been most nervous about in a long time, to see whether it would work. But actually, it's been terrific. We use a board called Miro that some of you will be familiar with. And we run co-production sessions with young people and with workers right across the UK. So now we can have people chatting from one end of the country to the other, which is really nice. It's a really good way to do things.
Thanks, Jill. We've got another question here from Lisa Bolin. Victoria spoke about changes needed on state level. Do Joao, Jill, or Yvonne have any similar suggestions on a governmental level and needed to improve digital inclusion? And I also noted many of the things that Victoria was saying, but particularly about government websites and inaccessibility. I mean, it's something I struggle with, and I'm not a digital illiterate either. But please do comment on that, Yvonne. Perhaps?
I would just say I completely agree with Victoria about Wi-Fi. We have various government schemes to give people devices. Devices are pointless and useless without Wi-Fi. People can't afford to buy data. You know, they have to have free Wi-Fi. We should have it over the whole country. Free broadband would have been the godsend that we all need in COVID. What Jill and I have found is that children who used to rely on going into school to have access to reliable internet and be able to tell people things now are trapped in homes with no data and no way of communicating. That's my strong view, that we need free Wi-Fi.
Well, absolutely. And also, very interestingly, Victoria mentioned McDonald's and the important role that McDonald's plays, for example.
Absolutely.
And under lockdown conditions in the UK, for example, I'm not sure. I am actually not currently in the UK, so I can't really comment, but I'm not sure what the state of play is there. Penny Siddle from Dorset has also just posted, I'd be interested to hear about any projects anyone is involved in to help provide data to people who can't access it, providing MiFis when we provide devices, or making public Wi-Fi available. So this is related to the comments that have just gone. So for longer in the evenings, etc., are good ideas, but do people have any others? So I stopped you there, Joao. Do you have a thought on the previous question or this?
Yeah. I have both. Thank you. On the preview question is quite important for us, okay? And we had to change. I told you in the presentation. Then the biggest difference between Portugal and UK is the face-to-face, okay? And when the biggest difference is the face-to-face, and you got online, is quite complex. But anyway, it is we changed everything to online. As I told you, the visits to the schools online, and we can have more partners on inside the regionals and the events. We do it not normally with Zoom and simple, or we did it with a studio in a like a TV mode and so on, for the students to see the importance of the work they are doing, but in the contents, and I challenge Heather to say something about this. In the contents, we try to have contents for home studying for the students, and these changes are completely important. The only thing that I want to signalize here is that a lot of us are enthusiastic because the online get a lot more people online and so on. You can get a lot more people, but for instance, in Portugal, for our program, the face-to-face keeps a lot important, and this is the differentiator with other programs. Other initiatives are good initiatives, that's a lot of them. And for the inclusion, for the real inclusion of the people, even to reducing the digital gap, the face-to-face is quite important.
So one thing that all of these programs, these apps, these projects have in common is co-creation. I mean, every one of you has has involved the end users in the actual design. I mean, I was really blown away when I first ran into Momo, for example, who at that time were working with children in care and enabling, I think this was it your one app, guys?
Yes.
Yeah. So, and that was, it's phenomenal, the difference that that something could make to empower the voices of children. I mean, I think that's great. So we have a fantastically interesting audience. Please do either raise your hand and you can speak, or post more questions in chat. Andrew, I'm sure you've been very, very vocal elsewhere. Very interesting questions. You got anything you'd like to say?
Am I the right Andrew, by the way?
Yes, Aaron Digital Blacksmith.
Yes, Aaron Digital Blacksmith. Yes, I've been reflecting on that. I've heard some great case studies, including here, and some wonderful frameworks for doing stuff like the apps for good, and really like the techniques in mind of my own. I think being able to reach out to the user community that's suffering the exclusion is fantastic. I suppose the Digital Blacksmith initiative has arisen on Aaron. Really, it's a bottom-up approach. There was no big fund that we could tap into, or no big initiative that we could just roll out. It was more that I started to work in the field of rural connectivity and work out how you get connectivity to people who are generally haven't been enjoying very good connectivity in the past. And so we've worked with companies like Microsoft on some very interesting solutions, which have been now tried in different parts of the UK, other parts of the world, Africa, South America. And when I was looking at how that would work in a Scottish community, the Isle of Arran, it was great because you could see people suddenly starting to be able to do things. We had the local garage owner who'd given up years ago on getting any good broadband. And the awful thing for him was he was trying to get cars for his business online car auctions, the only way he could get it. And he'd see a car he wanted, bid on it, and by the time his click came through, he'd actually bought a different car. Oh. So it was completely unusable. He got decent broadband through this initiative called Arran Broadband, and his jaw dropped. He just couldn't believe that was possible. So we've definitely seen the results of that. But it occurred to me that without the skills, this connectivity wouldn't have the full benefit. So I set to work on a model called Digital Blacksmith, and we worked together with some young people locally, some who'd qualified. Glasgow School of Art had some great understandings of things that you might want to do with the community and how you might want to brand such a we think of it in terms of a hub for skills, something that signposts, helps people to reach out for the tools that they need at the time. So for example, we've worked with entrepreneurs. We got a little group together around smart farming, inviting some academics down from Glasgow in Scotland and the Scottish Government representative to get people excited about what you could do with new sensors. We've run internet safety workshops in schools, participated in Careers Day, where it's really about opening people's minds up to what digital offers. Because, yes, I mean, we had one girl who put her hand up and said, yeah, but I only want to be a hairdresser, so what does it do for me? And, you know, when we started talking about how people would be using mobile phones in the future, coming in, seeing a style they want, seeing that with their face and saying, that's what I want. If your shop isn't offering that, then clearly you might be missing customers in the future. So there's so many different avenues of life. And of course, a community like the Isle of Arran actually has relatively more elderly people in it than a normal community, because people with pensions can afford to live there, basically, and some only just. But they're also a group that's typically not well connected, and it's possibly because they don't even know that they need to be. But the lockdown has really brought that home in a very hard way. So, you know, I think pretty well everyone can see now that they do need connectivity. No good just relying on the library, because that gets closed during pandemics. So an organic community-facing approach, I think, has a lot of advantages. And so we've been opportunistic, organic in the way we've tried to build up, rather than having some sort of big bang, which would suit a nice deep pocket somewhere, I guess.
Thank you, Andrew. That's absolutely brilliant. So we've touched on lots of things there that others have also mentioned, is relevance, meaning, adaptability and resilience have stood out from the things that I've been hearing. You know, I would very much like to hear from everyone else or other people that may have something to say in this case, in this area. Particularly about challenges, solutions. Now, I had asked all of our panelists to think about questions. What are the key challenges and issues as they see them? So I understand, I believe Jill has some that she was prepared to pose. So
yeah, I mean, I can post them in the chat, but I can tell you as well. And by the way, thank you very much about considering rural connectivity. I'm living proof that it changes your life. I used to have to hotspot, swap onto a dongle and then try the house Wi-Fi. And 5.5 years after BT told me they would give me it, we actually got fiber. And now it is literally life-changing, especially when you're trying to run a tech business from up a mountain. But my question is more general, really. My question to the group is, what sort of barriers do you experience in keeping inclusion at the forefront of your services or the work that you do? And I'd be interested to hear from some of the people maybe that haven't spoken yet.
Yeah. Catherine, go.
Hi there, and thank you very much for inviting me. I'm sorry, my technology hasn't been great today. In answer to the barriers, the big barrier for us in London, working with people who are neurodivergent, dyslexic or autistic or have ADHD, is poverty. A lot of people are on very low income, and some people have just been talking about broadband issues and Wi-Fi. And, you know, when people don't have access to the technology or the Wi-Fi, that's a major issue. Also, another big barrier for neurodivergent people who are in the poverty trap is often they have really low skills on literacy and numeracy. So it's incredibly hard for them to actually even read instructions and know how to open technology. So all that face-to-face work that we used to do, which was all about verbal and visual signals and communication, has just gone in a flash with COVID. And so it's left an awful lot of neurodivergent people absolutely stranded. And I represent a charity called Achievability that works with at this exact group. And we've been working with James, who's here today from St Mungo's, and working on a course called Digital Skills for Life. And James will say something in a minute, but St Mungo's have been doing some fantastic work in getting mobile technology to the hardest to reach, who are homeless and neurodivergent. But still, you've got this issue, this barrier, when people have got such severe literacy skills that they can't even read the instructions on their mobile communications. They need that face-to-face connection, and they're being lost. They're being lost in education, they're being lost in training, they're being lost. And that's a big issue at the moment.
Thank you, Catherine. That's really, it's really good to hear from you. I'm so glad that you've taken part, and I'm really pleased to hear that Mungo's are also here somewhere. I have invited others who with a view to actually trying to give a voice to exactly what you're speaking about now, you know, this issue of actually choosing between food on the table and access, internet access, data, tech. It was very interesting, in fact, having the conversations that I've had with Jill, Joao, Victoria, also Penny and Dorset and yourselves, around all of this, because it's concerned me on the Medici project, the connection between digital and social inequalities and these issues. Penny is here, so Penny's just popped up. So Penny, would you repeat what you said to me when we were, I mean, Penny talked about content and ways of drawing people in, but I think Penny would have much more to say about this than me. So
I was going to talk about a project that we're doing in Bournemouth, with some help from JP Morgan, some funding from JP Morgan, with homeless people, with unemployed people and people who are underemployed. And it's a really good all-round package. So we have, it's well funded, unlike a lot of the digital inclusion activity, certainly in the UK, which is, you know, reaching down the back of the sofa to see if there's any bit of funding available, and trying to put something together without proper funding. This one is properly funded. So we've got project managers, we've got mentors, people come on to the training, and there's an all-round support package for them for their period of 12 weeks that they're on the programme. They have mentors, and they have people who will guide them to the most appropriate training for them. They also have volunteer digital champions on a one-to-one basis who can help them with any hurdles that they've got in terms of learning bits of digital skills. And we're getting some great results and some really fantastic stories of people whose life has been changed by this. But the problem that we have is really convincing our decision makers and budget holders that projects like this really do work, and it is worth the investment of funding them properly. And also actually getting people to join the programme. So at the moment, the programme manager is struggling to get a quota of 8 to 10 people per month to start, despite the fact that we are getting really great results. And I think case studies say so much, don't they? When people in their own words explain the effect that some help, some intervention has had on them. Like you were saying about being up the mountain and your better broadband and how that's changed your life. You know, it's stories like that people really then have confidence that actually it's worth them investing the time and the effort or the funding in proper or sort of 3-dimensional programs.
Thanks, Penny. I'm aware of the fact we've got 6 minutes left, so can you all have a think about what, in one word, one thing that you think is absolutely crucial in terms of moving forward in terms of challenges for the groups that you're aware of or in the areas that you work in terms of digital inclusion, but also its relationship to other inequalities? So if you, and just far away, James, you had your hand up there. Was there something that you wanted to say?
It was hello, James here from St. Mungo's. It was a really quick question for Penny. I was just wondering, that one-to-one support, have you been able to continue face-to-face throughout? Because that's the biggest challenge for us. At St. Mungo's, we had physical recovery colleges. We've converted them to online recovery colleges, which is great. It's going well, got high attendances. But again, if you don't have the basic understanding or the fundamental understanding of how to use a device, and if you don't have the device and the internet as well, then you're excluded. So it's massive exclusion. And we're not doing that face-to-face support, which we really, really need to do. And I was just wondering if you were doing it, and if you were, maybe we could chat later on and you could tell me how you were able to convince the leaders in your organization to continue that face-to-face throughout the pandemic.
Yeah, James, I have all the pleasure to explain to you, because in this moment we are creating a plan to scale it nationally, and we are doing obviously with samples. Okay, we don't visit 3,000 schools, we visit 100 schools. Okay, but if you pick the ones from the interior, the ones less privileged, you can have a good picture of all the things. And if you have a good support team, you can have a good support by telephone, by email, and even with the right pitches. When, for instance, the teachers call saying or crying that, whoa, my students want to give up from the project, and you have the right briefing to tell them how not to give up and so on. And that's why I think that's the big differentiation, and that you are completely right. That's the big question, but we can do it in a way of sampling, you know.
Thanks, Joelle. Penny, did you have a response to James's question?
Sadly, we're not doing face-to-face. The learners pick up their device and get a very brief introduction to it when they pick it up in a library in a controlled setting. But the work that we're doing with our digital champions is not face-to-face, to everybody's frustration. We actually gave out new devices to some people who were blind, and we helped them get going over the telephone. Just incredibly difficult, incredibly difficult. If you can have an intermediary, somebody sitting with the learner who can see things, that helps and explain things. It's really hard, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
No solutions, I'm afraid.
Thank you, Penny. Can I draw everybody's attention to Medici for a moment? Because it sounds to me as though greater connections would help all of us. And I think that this is one thing that perhaps Medici can help with. Medici, there is a knowledge community. If you haven't already engaged and aren't registered with the Medici platform, then please do so via the websites. But I think what's really valuable in this conference period is these connections between those of us working in this field, those that have experience, etc., etc. So please do, keep in touch. I'll have to seek permissions, I expect, but I'm happy to act as intermediary between all of those present here. I'm looking forward to further conversations myself, with some of our panelists, to do with projects that I'm working on elsewhere with marginalized young people. So, I think the great strength of something like Medici is these networking opportunities, this knowledge exchange. Hopefully the map is useful. So the map and this repository of good practices is helpful to everybody. But thank you so much for being involved. Is there anything else that anyone has a really burning urge to say in 1 minute?
Yes, Greg, how do I spell, is it Medici?
I'll post the website in the chat. Yeah. So yeah, Medici project.eu. It's got a hyphen, hasn't it, guys?
Yeah.
Okay, so thank you ever so much, everybody, for your participation today. We are on time, I believe.
Oh,
Thank you so much, Greg, for the organization, and we kept the time.
Thanks for showing up, Victoria. And thanks to absolutely everybody. And I must say, so far, the whole conference has been really, really fascinating. I mean, there's been some phenomenal sessions, from keynotes to, I didn't know where to go this morning. I wanted to be in all of the sessions and I couldn't be. So that's great.
And tomorrow we still have a couple of them. So you can find them. I will also post it here on our in the chat so that you can check the program. But tomorrow we will have one on the challenges of the COVID, and a second one about sustainability of the project. So I'm seeing a few questions about the map, if it can be still, updated and so on, the future of the project. So tomorrow we will also speak about it.
Yeah, you're still able to post, to engage and submit cases too. So if you're not on the map, let us know. All right, thanks everybody.
This is great.
Bye.
Thank you very